5 Live Formula One.
At a racing circuit where Mercedes has had more wins than any other teams in Formula One, current driver George Russell, who won at Canada 2 weeks ago, was fastest in first practice earlier today. Welcome to the Radio 5 Sports Extra coverage of the Austrian Grand Prix weekend from me, Ben Edwards, on a day when the future relationship between Russell and Mercedes is a little bit up in the air. But right now, we're preparing for second free practice. Rosanna Tennant is our pit lane reporter. And Rosanna, we're going to see both Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc out for the first time today after rookie team drivers Alex Dunn and Dino Beganovic had their FP1 opportunities earlier, and it was an impressive fourth fastest time by Alex Dunn.
Such a great performance from the F2 driver Alex Dunn, Irish driver, taking Lando Norris's place for the first practice session and finishing fourth. Absolutely stunning from him. He's then had to go back and qualify for F2, qualified seventh. So tricky, that challenge, jumping between different formula. But what a result for Dunn. And Beganovic down in 18th in Ferrari, and that was a difficult session for Ferrari all round. But we're gearing up for FP2. Fans are taking their seats in the grandstand, and it's pretty cloudy, very warm still, 24 degrees, but a lot of cloud cover. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for any raindrops. There were a few at the end of the first practice session, and we're surrounded by forests here in the Styrian Mountains, so the weather can change on a dime. So some dark clouds as I look up towards turn one. Will they come and deliver a few raindrops in the next hour? We'll wait and see.
Well, we will. We will be fascinated to see if it does get wet. I am joined by racer Alice Powell and by F1 correspondent for BBC Sport, Andrew Benson. Alice, we are always enjoying this Austrian circuit. We were talking earlier to you about when you raced here and how much you love it. What we saw earlier on today in free practice, as ever, it's always going to be pretty close, and we know that when we get into qualifying, even closer. It was just over a second between first and 20th in FP1. I think we're going to get even closer as we go through the weekend, but FP2, they will be doing some pretty important kind of qualifying runs about a third of the way through it, and we'll see what they can do then.
Yeah, this is going to be about a similar time that we're going to have qualifying tomorrow, so you could say it's the best representation of potential temperatures and track temperatures as well. Maybe not so much track conditions, because we have got another practice session tomorrow morning. Same with Formula 3, there'll be a race in a Porsche Super Cup qualifying as well, so track condition can slightly change, but it's still going to be a similar time of day that we will get qualifying. And you're right, I think these times are going to get closer and closer and closer. We've seen the support races today. They've particularly Formula 2, which are the closest to Formula 1 on the support race. 0.3 of a second separated the top 10. Okay, they're all in identical machinery, but still, that's so close. And it's not basic is the wrong word, but it's a fairly simple circuit in terms of it's particularly the first sector, heavy braking zone, get the car rotated, get on the throttle. Your typical 90 right-handers, they're all right-handers, and then you go into the final sector, which is the slightly more challenging area of the circuit. But a lot of the drivers here in Formula 1 have had so much experience racing around this circuit. They even have done private testing, some drivers in the season's past car. So it's one that teams have a lot of knowledge on as well, which also aids to how close it can be.
Well, as I say, Andrew Benson also joins us. And Andrew, this is a circuit where, of course, McLaren have had some good bonuses. They've worked on the cars and benefited them well. They've done more work on them this weekend. We'll see how that works. But it is a track with history that has been fantastic for Max Verstappen, hasn't it?
It has. He had a little bit of an argument, actually, with the FIA press conference compere yesterday, didn't he? Because Tom Clarkson, that's the compere, said that he'd won 4 times here.
That's right.
Tom was forgetting the Styrian Grand Prix in the COVID year, which Verstappen also won. So it's actually 5, which is really impressive in just that short space of time that we're talking about. But also, actually, interestingly, this is a track where Lando Norris has traditionally gone really well. In fact, if people cast their minds back 2 years, which was the time when McLaren brought the famous upgrade that turned them from basically back markers into front runners, and only Norris had it for this race that year, 2 years ago. And he qualified really well and raced really well, but it meant that because McLaren knew that Norris was so good around this track, they weren't completely sure whether the performance upstep that they'd seen was all to do with the aerodynamic progress that they'd made, or whether some of it was Norris. It became clear straight afterwards at Silverstone that it was the car and not just Norris. But it's an indication of how quick he can be, and let's not forget that he was competing with Verstappen for the victory here last year before they collided in the first of what has become several incidents between the two of them, and Verstappen got penalised for that incident, but that's what let Russell through for the win, because actually Russell was nowhere near that lead battle last year.
Absolutely right. The car's just heading out onto track now for this second free practice session. As you say, it has been a good one for Norris, a good track. He had his first ever podium here in 2020. He had his first ever front row start in Formula One here in 2021. So we're just seeing Lando about to head out onto the circuit now, actually. He's just about to leave the garage for McLaren. First time out, of course. Second in the championship at the moment. 22 points behind his teammate Oscar Piastri. Let's go down to Rosanna.
And that sound there is Lando Norris leaving the McLaren garage. It was taking a bit of time to get him strapped in to the cockpit of his McLaren. Of course, we had Alex Dunn in FP1, so they'll have been putting his seat in and making sure everything was just as Norris wanted. But so many cameramen around trying to get the shot of him in the McLaren, trying to kind of increase the pressure, if you like, because I think there have been so many questions about Lando Norris's mindset and his racecraft coming into this weekend off the back of what happened in Canada 2 weeks ago, running into his teammate Oscar Piastri. People really questioning his ability, but as we just said, he's had success around this track. He's a fast driver, and he's not a stupid driver, is he, Ben? And that's what he said. It was stupid of him running into the back of Piastri, which, okay, in isolation is, but he's also a clever driver, so I think he's going to probably hope to put that behind him and go out and execute a great weekend from now on in, of course, having sat out that first session.
Absolutely, no, I totally agree with that, and he has the ability to do that. You know, he didn't qualify so well at Imola this year. He qualified fourth, but he did get second and then went on to Monaco, took that pole position that was so important. He has the ability to come back, and this is a track where he's gone well in the past, so we shall see how it goes for Lando Norris. But it is an important weekend for him in some ways, having lost some more vital points to his teammate Oscar Piastri as a result of that incident in Canada. So Red Bull are not quite ready to get Max Verstappen out onto the circuit just yet. Listening to Liam Lawson.
Something's not right. My steering is pulling me massively to the right.
Understood.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Alice, that his steering has got a real pull.
Yeah, so they would have tracked the car up, probably put it on the patch, had a little look at the corner weights. It could be... Well, it could be numerous amount of things, either to do with the column. He's sort of gently weaving left to right. He's going quite slowly to keep out the way. Here he is again.
If I let go of the steering, it goes hard right.
Interesting. So it's pulling right the whole time, even on a straight line.
And actually, when he just braked there, and it wasn't a hard brake going into turn 4, which is the downhill section, the middle sector. In the middle sector, it locked up really easily. So either there's a corner weight, something with a suspension there potentially. So he's going to have to crawl his way back round into the garage. The team will check it out, but not a great start to the session for Liam Lawson, as Lando Norris now is going to come down the straight from turn 3. He's getting past some of the traffic on the inside there, and he'll start to feed around to set his first lap time of the day.
Lance Stroll has just set the initial pace in this session, as he did earlier. Interestingly, Lance Stroll's been going reasonably well so far this weekend. He always does enjoy this circuit, there's no doubt. Whether he can out-qualify his teammate Fernando Alonso for the first time in 22 Grand Prix, we shall see. Kimi Antonelli's just gone fastest now. We're riding on board with Lando Norris as he comes into the final 2 right-handers. Easy to run wide, but he's absolutely spot on there. He's pushing, but not flat out yet in a way. He's gone 5th fastest with that. That's pretty impressive, bearing in mind he didn't do any laps in FP1, but he feels at home straight away in FP2.
They do so much time on the simulator these days that transitioning over to a track, if you've missed the first part of the session, it makes it slightly easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it slightly easier. And so we got Lance Stroll having a real kick of oversteer on the exit of turn 1. Antonelli dipped a wheel in the gravel, just about kept it within track limits, but I feel sorry for the driver behind
yes.
who's going to get a face full of gravel. And trust me, if one of those bits of stone gravel hits you on the knuckle, it's quite painful. I think that happened. Did that happen to Roman Grosjean one year? I'm pretty sure it did. And he came over the radio complaining about it. But George Russell now, I think he's just about to steal the fastest lap time so far. And just as I say that, he does not. He lost some time, quite a bit of time in that final sector compared to his teammate, but he was fastest of anybody in the first sector.
Yeah, so it's Antonelli fastest, Russell second, Mercedes 1-2 at this early stage. Lance Stroll is third, Piastri's up in fourth, Alonso in the other Aston Martin is in fifth, and then Lando Norris is now sixth. But we're still waiting for plenty of drivers to come out and play. Charles Leclerc, for example, who didn't do FP1 because we had the rookie driver in his car earlier, he will be out on the circuit in just a moment. He's had a funny time here over the years in Austria. He's had a win back in 2022. He's had a pole, several podiums, but he's also had several times where he's had to make a pit stop at the end of the first lap. I think it's happened on 3 occasions, and with various incidents happening on the opening lap, including last year. Russell just saying the wind has changed quite a lot.
So it looks like, Ben, we've got a tailwind now going up to turn 3. So exit of turn 1 up to turn 3, and earlier on in the day we had a crosswind going up to turn 3. So certainly that's going to be 4 kilometres an hour wind, so it's not too strong, but it's something that clearly George Russell is feeling. And actually, if you don't get told it on the radio, you can spot out there's plenty of flags around the circuit, whether they're fans, whether they're on top of the grandstand. So that's also a good way for drivers to have a little look instead of wasting some time going on the radio and asking. They can keep an eye on it out on track as well.
Piastri's just gone fastest on hard compound tyres compared to Antonelli and Alonso, who's now third on medium tyres. So that's quite impressive what Oscar Piastri's just done, a 106.129, but that's not as fast as we saw earlier on in FP1 when they were in the 105s, with George Russell setting the pace there earlier on. We shall see how that goes, and we are expecting them to be down into the 104s, I would imagine, when we get into the soft tyre running a little bit later on in this second practice session.
It's a short track, it's a short lap. It's least amount of corners, only 10 corners. You could even
the 10 corners. There aren't 10 proper corners, are there?
No, and I was just about to say there's a kink on the straight on the exit of turn 1, and that's apparently turn 2.
Yeah,
but that's
right.
A whole different debate we can go into. I wouldn't say that's really a corner. Andrew's just about to come in and give his opinion. Is turn 2 an actual corner?
No.
There we go. I agree.
There's 7 corners, aren't there?
Turn
Turn 1, turn 3 is turn 2, turn 4 is turn 3. Then the kink between what they call 4 and 6, which they call turn 5, isn't a corner at all. It's flat out. Then turn 6 is actually turn 4. Turn 7 is actually turn 5, and then the last 2 corners are 6 and 7. But
I would love to know why they think that is a corner, because I think even for a motorbike that wouldn't really be
turn 2. I think in some ways they just give these areas a number so that it gives you a relative in a way to know what area you're talking about, because it's such a long way from turn 1 to, as you say, would be turn 2. So they put this little kink in calling that turn 2, and then it's turn 3 after that.
It's almost like they're embarrassed, isn't it, that the track's so short
compared to how it used to be at Österreichring.
Well, the funny thing is, Ben, and you'll remember as well, of course, the shape of the track is more or less identical to what it used to be, but it's a mile and a bit shorter because they had to, when they redeveloped it in the 90s, it was all to do with the land around the circuit. The farmers that lived around it, some of them didn't want to give their land up anymore, and they weren't able to build the circuit on the same format that it was before. In actual fact, I think the old Österreichring, magnificent though it was, would be too fast for a current Formula 1 car. Some of the corners wouldn't be corners. We used to think about the Bosch curve, for example, and what used to be called the Rindt curve, which was the last corner was 1 corner, which has now been squared off into 2. and what used to be called the Glatz curve, which is what is effectively turn 3, but it was on the other side of some mountains back then. I think they'd almost all be flat out completely in a Formula 1 car, and I can't imagine the size of the run-off area you'd need to be able to have those corners with a modern Formula 1 car.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I did actually race junior level racing at Österreich in the old days. In Formula,
what year was that?
Formula Vauxhall Lotus it was in the late 1990s.
That was something else.
Oh. Yeah, and it was incredibly exciting, especially when it rained as well at one point. But this modern circuit, a shorter track, different, in the same place, different circuit. It is still a great circuit. I really enjoy it. Let's go back to Rosanna.
Yeah, just watching Max Verstappen get ready to go out. Slightly slow from Red Bull, sending him out into the FP2 session, but a few mechanics working at the back of the Red Bull, so I wonder if there was something they wanted to have a look at before he headed out. Paul Monahan, who is in charge of the performance at Red Bull, just watching on as well. Mechanics now putting the tyres on, the gun's going to work. The screen has been brought down so that Max can see all the data and telemetry, so he's not quite ready to head out. He's got his helmet on though in the cockpit, as you would imagine, and hopefully we'll see the champion out soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Rosanna. Useful to know. Lando Norris is fastest, so not having done FP1, he has set the pace by a tiny margin. It's still Russell in between the two McLarens, interestingly. George Russell second, Piastri third, then Antonelli. So it's McLaren versus Mercedes at this stage. We're just watching an on-board with Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, you could just hear the rev spike as he bounced a wheel on the sausage curb on the outside there. That's as max as you want to go over that. But just talking about Lando Norris, he's just set the fastest of anybody in the first sector and again in the middle sector. So it looks like he's about to go even faster. Bortoletto is on an out lap now, about to start a push lap again for him. He was up in the top 10 during free practice free practice 1 earlier on today, as we await Lando Norris. Quite a bit of traffic out there, and yes, Lando goes even faster, a 105.538 for him, and that's 4/10 quicker than George Russell.
Yeah, that's a bit like the margin that Max Verstappen had here last year in qualifying, 4/10, but it's not often that it's that much around this track. We shall see how this all develops. We're keeping an eye on Nico Hülkenberg, who's doing a pretty good job so far. As you say, his teammate was 6th fastest earlier on in FP1. Hülkenberg himself was 12th quickest in FP1, but it is a track that he normally does go well on. Gasly's moved up again. It's funny, I do find it a bit odd, the Alpine at the moment, because at some circuits we're seeing Gasly jump right up the order. Other circuits, and I know qualifying didn't quite go well for him in Canada, and he ended up right down at the back, but there are some circuits where it just doesn't work at all.
No, and I think they're just as confused sometimes as to why it does or doesn't work. But he's on the hard tyre, and his teammate Colapinto is down in 17th at the moment. Let's hear from Leclerc.
The car is not decelerating at all into turn 1.
Gosh, that's Leclerc reporting on his car. That sounds tricky. Andrew?
The other thing that's interesting about Alpine is that they are last in the Constructors' Championship, but they don't have the slowest car. They're 8th quickest. The Sauber and the Haas are both on average slower than them, and they're only just behind Aston Martin, although Aston Martin have made a lot of progress in the last few races. So why they've converted the 8th fastest car into the 10th best position in the Constructors' Championship is another question. I have to be honest, I don't really know the answer, but they do seem to be, I mean, they're a team with a lot of question marks over them at the moment. Obviously, Flavio Briatore was brought in as executive advisor, de facto team boss, about this time last year, in fact. He brought in Oliver Oakes as his team principal after trying a whole bunch of other people first, all of whom said no. Basically all the people that Briatore used to work with at Renault in the old days, Briatore asked to come back, and they all went, no thanks, Flav. And Ollie Oakes was like 7th in line or something, I believe. Anyway, Ollie Oakes is not there anymore. And meanwhile, Luca Di Maio, who's the Renault CEO, but not for much longer, because he's about to leave and go to Gucci, and it was his brainchild to rebrand Renault as Alpine. It was his brainchild to close down the Renault F1 engine program and buy the Mercedes engines for next year. It was his idea to bring Briatore back. Briatore has some enemies on the Renault board, I'm told, and of course he was a controversial appointment. So it's probably not. So we don't know what the future of this team is. We don't know what the future of Briatore at the team is. So it's hardly a surprise that in that kind of here's Hamilton's radio?
For some reason, there's no pace, mate.
More woe for Lewis Hamilton, not for the first time this year. It's no surprise, really, is it, when you've got that much management turmoil going on, that the team itself finds it hard to isolate itself from that.
And I think when a lot of time that I spent, obviously, at Alpine in the past few years, and Luca has done a fantastic job with the team, was always supportive of the drivers, but we always were sort of heard whispers and were kind of told that while Luca was at Renault, the team wouldn't be sold, and obviously he's not going to be there for much longer.
Interesting stuff. Well, Verstappen's just gone second fastest. He is on the soft tyres, so he's gone in between the two McLarens on medium compounds, and it is now all looking very close. And off has gone Leclerc. Just trying to rejoin. He is rejoining. He's
exit
going
of 6, I think, isn't
and he's on through the gravel and back on, but I didn't see the beginning of that. We'll hopefully get another replay of that in a sec.
Worth saying, by the way, we've heard Hamilton complaining about lack of pace on the radio. We've got Leclerc talking about problems breaking into, was it turn 1, and now he's just gone off. This is the race where Ferrari brought their first upgrade since Bahrain, and the drivers have been saying in the races between Bahrain and this one that they really need this upgrade. It's an entirely new floor from front to back, and so this is not an encouraging start to this weekend with a completely new floor on the car, to have the drivers obviously struggling in such a way.
That's very true. It is something that is a bit of a worry. Norris fastest from Verstappen. Piastri, Sainz up there in 4th place at the moment from George Russell in 5th. And here we go, Alice. Let's have a look at what Charles Leclerc did.
So he gets a kick of oversteer just as he's bleeding off the brake and trying to wind it into turn 3, and then here through turn 6, turns in. I'm guessing he's going to get a horrible snap of oversteer, which then sends in out wide through the gravel. It's quite early on in the corner. Turn 6 is a longer left-hander than you would think.
He dealt with that very well. He's obviously been off there before, because he didn't try and tweak the car at all, where he would have spun in the gravel and then could have ended up stuck. He just, oh my goodness, we're also seeing Kimi Antonelli going around the outside of Hamilton. Let's listen.
Hey, what is going on with these people, honestly?
Yeah, Hamilton was at fault there, just dawdling on the racing line, actually moving back to the racing line when Antonelli was coming up behind him. Let's see if we're going to get any Hamilton radio.
I could see Antonelli at all.
It's interesting, because he was looking in his mirror, and yet he did move over and then realised he was there, and he did apologise. But Hamilton's having a bit of a tough time at the moment, isn't he?
It's and as we've already touched on, they really needed these upgrades, and were feeling fairly confident, you could say, that it was going to help them. I mean, there was mixed reviews, mixed interviews, should I say, from Hamilton, but it's not working so far for them. It's he's obviously had that issue with his gearbox in free practice 1. Leclerc was not in the car for free practice 1, but Ganevich was in the car, so Leclerc's now in 10th place. Hamilton has jumped further up the order, though. He's now in 8th place on the hard tyre, and actually, as I say that, jumped up into P4, so feeling maybe a little bit more comfortable after a bit more running. The highest of the hard runners is Oscar Piastri, and Hamilton's 2/10 off him in 4th.
Absolutely, and the stewards will be looking into that little incident potentially. Thankfully, there wasn't any damage done. Now, Max Verstappen is currently 2nd fastest. He's taking it quite slow at the moment. Whether he's just trying to keep those soft tyres and do another quick lap in a moment, we shall see. But he is the first, I think, on the soft tyres in this FP2. We will be seeing, I'm sure, everybody out at some point to do a qualifying run. But he's 2/10 off Lando Norris, who's been out on the medium tyres so far.
He is, but I think that Oscar will bolt on a set of medium tyres and probably close that gap. Could go even faster, but Max Verstappen's keeping out of the way of the traffic. One of the RBs just flying past there. Liam Lawson is back out on track now as well after that steering issue.
Yeah, Leclerc's just moved up again. He's up to 5th now, so suddenly the Ferraris are 4th and 5th, which is a little better than they were showing initially. George Russell, of course, who was fastest in FP1 and has shown some good pace, he is now on soft tyres. This will be interesting. He's just set the fastest first sector of anybody through turn 3. That looks very neat and tidy. He's up to the highest part of the track. Now it starts to drop away just a little bit as he comes down into turn 4, and this, he just needs that clear run, and the track now drops even further. He uses quite a lot of exit there, but not into the gravel, which is the important thing, and then into the 2 rapid left-handers.
Yes, this is where we saw Charles Leclerc get that kick of oversteer through the gravel. Nicely done there for Leclerc through 6, then 7, 8, up to 9, which is the start of the pit entry in a blind. You need to make a quick entry if you've got cars behind you if you're going to the pits. A little bit of kick of oversteer on the way in for George Russell, but he's fighting the car all the way around on the exit of turn 10. It's a purple in the first 2 sectors, not purple in the final sector, and only moves up into P2. I was expecting a little bit more from George on that soft tyre, because the first 2 sectors were looking pretty handy.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was going to take top spot, but by 0.034, he hasn't quite taken it from Lando Norris. We're just looking at a replay of Norris through turn 1. He did have to overtake another car there, whether that cost him time, and then he had to get past another one, a couple of cars in fact, as he came down towards turn 3. That was Max, wasn't it, that he went past?
Yeah, I don't know why he... so Max was pulling over to the left-hand side, getting totally out of Lando's way, and then it was here from Verstappen.
What the hell? Straight to the left.
I agreed to Max. It was close. Max was moving out the way, and Lando was either playing a bit of silly games there or wanted to just go on that specific part of the track. There was no need to do it, but anyway, there wasn't a collision. Luckily, so Max still circulating quite slowly on that soft tyre. Let's have a look. His last lap was 0.2 slower than his best. Charles Leclerc now is going through turn 4, up through the kink that we said isn't a corner, turn 5, or shouldn't be a corner, and he set a personal best in the first sector.
Yeah, through turn 6 into turn 7, and he's doing a nice job, but he's still on the medium compound tyres. He's not gone onto the softs yet. Kimi Antonelli is out on a set of soft tyres now, so he may well be improving on lap times. Bit of a wobble through the penultimate corner for Charles Leclerc, but he dealt with it okay, and we'll just see if on the medium tyres he does a slightly better lap. Yeah, it's a fraction better, so he moves up into 5th place, and the Ferrari is looking a little better. Antonelli in the soft tyres, he now goes 5th, so he's just taken that place back from Charles Leclerc, but that, yeah, he'll be a little disappointed with that, because he's some 0.3 away from teammate George Russell. Russell currently 2nd, Antonelli 5th.
Yes, he is. He'll obviously, this is still practice. Who knows what fuel loads people have.
Absolutely, yeah. You never quite
engine
know.
modes, they won't be turned right up. There's no point wasting or sort of putting the engine through that, the gearbox, all the rest of those other parts, through that amount of stress in free practice.
Further down the order, we're still seeing the Haas cars not showing the sort of single lap pace. This has been a bit of a thing this year, that perhaps not such a quick car in qualifying, but they've been race pace has been reasonable. The Alpine we were talking about earlier, Gasly's dropped down a bit. He's down in 12th, but Colapinto's still struggling quite a lot at the moment. He is in the pits. They may be doing some changes to the car. He's down in 19th place at the moment.
He's just not had...
Except for Canada, he was a bit better there, wasn't he?
He was better there, in all fairness to him, but he's kind of had similar results to Jack Doohan.
Yeah, because
really.
he's not actually scored any points, has he?
No, and they obviously, for many different reasons, and this could be the rest of free practice if we were going to talk about the many reasons. One of them, of course, is to do with finances. But, you know, he's not done the job as well as what they kind of were expecting him to do as well, because he stepped in to the Williams last year, and I actually think he did a fairly decent job.
Yeah.
Okay, had some impressive crashes, particularly that one in Vegas. But yeah, a bit of a disappointing showing so far for Colapinto, but a rookie that is probably one of my drivers of the season so far is Isaac Hadjar in the RB on the soft tyre, and he's just gone fastest of anybody in the middle sector.
Wow, we're watching him now. That is impressive, and I have to say I've been very impressed with Hadjar.
I think he's
so
just
far.
backed off though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has slowed it down a bit now, which is understandable, but we shall see how this goes. He's the only driver who has not failed to get out of Q1 so far of anybody, actually, because over the years all the drivers, whether they're rookie drivers this year or drivers from the past, anyone would have failed in Q1 at some point. Okay, he's only had a short season so far, but he hasn't failed in Q1 yet. Listen to Hadjar.
Yeah, the washout was crazy.
He wasn't washing anything. The front end gave up. So basically he had some understeer, and I did think he looked like he went slightly wider than he would have liked on the exit of turn 7. So the front was just washing out. Basically he had some understeer and ran wider than he would have liked, which probably explained why he came into the pits. But just looking at his middle sector, that was a pretty handy one. First sector was okay, but George Russell now has just set a blinding first sector.
Okay, and Antonelli's just gone back out as well, so we'll see whether both Mercedes can find a bit more pace here. Yeah, there's George Russell. Just keeping an eye on George Russell. So he's only 0.034 off the time that Norris has done so far, but Norris did that on the medium tyre, sorry. Russell has set the pace in that first sector. We will wait to see the McLaren actually of Piastri just coming out now. Lando Norris is still in the pits at this stage, and George Russell, second sector, good, not the best, but this is likely to be a quick lap.
It is, and he's swooped through turn 9 now. Let's see if he can keep it out of the gravel. We've seen his teammate dip a wheel into the gravel there, does it quite nicely. Same with the final corner, turn 10. Is this going to be enough to pop up into top spot? It is a 105.229, so just over 0.2 of a second quicker than Lando Norris. Remember, Lando set his time though on the medium tyre. George is on the soft tyre, but still a decent effort from George, as we've already touched on a driver that's out of contract, surprisingly, for next season. And of course we'll be hoping that, at least for his sake, that won't be the same coming towards the end of this season.
Absolutely. And we've been hearing from Toto Wolff how they do really rate him extremely highly. That the reason that this conversation is going on is because there is a chance that Mercedes may try and get Verstappen, and that's what this story is all about at the moment, and that's partly why George Russell has not got a contract yet going forwards. But he's been doing a fantastic job. He's fastest again now. Norris is just coming out right now as well. We are keeping an eye on Franco Colapinto. My goodness, he was a bit close to the gravel there, but he dealt with it okay. He is on a set of soft tyres, and we'll just keep an eye He's not too far off what Russell has done, actually. This is going to be an improving lap on his soft tyre, so we'll just see where this puts him. He's got to get it right through the last 2 corners and not get too carried away. We've seen a lot of mistakes in this last corner over the years. He's dealt with that okay, uses just about the right amount of extra road as he comes out of it and goes across the line, and he goes 13th fastest with that. So it's an improvement, but it's still, I would think, on the soft tyres he would really want to be a bit further up than that.
And in all fairness to him, that Alpine looked horrible.
It did look hard, didn't it? Yeah.
It just looked so twitchy and nervous. He didn't even set a personal best in the first sector. His teammate now has just jumped up into P6. Times are tumbling now, Ben. This order keeps changing every time we look at it. Hamilton's up into P3 now, 2.5 tenths off Russell, but Piastri, I think he's going to jump potentially to the top of the times, and he does. 104.7. That's half a second clear of George Russell.
That's impressive, but Lando Norris is also on a good lap, so we'll keep an eye on him too. But Piastri, a 104.7. That is impressive. We're now listening in to Lando Norris, fastest in the first sector, fastest in the middle sector. Lando, who has always gone well at this circuit, is putting together another lap, and while he didn't do FP1 earlier today, it looks as though he's totally at home once again. And are these changes that they have made to the McLaren really working for him? Lovely through the last 2 corners. That was so neat and tidy. Let's see. He does it. 104.580. He goes 0.157 faster than teammate Piastri.
That McLaren looks so hooked up. He's driving it fantastically. His inputs were nice and smooth, but from some of the other onboards that we've been treated to seeing, particularly with the Alpine, that looks so hooked up, that McLaren. So it's a 1-2 for now in free practice 2 with 30 minutes and 47 seconds remaining. But I know it's early days, but certainly they've put down a strong benchmark, Andrew.
They have, yes, and I was just looking at the elsewhere down the times. It's like the two Aston Martin drivers seem to have swapped cars, because Lance Stroll is 3rd and Fernando Alonso is 7th, and Stroll's 6/10 quicker than Fernando Alonso.
Well, maybe he's had a good break.
Is he wearing the wrong helmet or something?
His
Fernando
hands
Alonso
all fixed up. You know, he's had a good think about life, and he's come back and he's in the top 3 in free practice 2.
Sure. No, but it's impressive though. You're right. That Lance Stroll's done a really good lap, and this is a track, as I've said before, that he actually does go well on at times. Yuki Tsunoda just going over the line, and Tsunoda is on the soft tyres. We're now basically with him as he goes on to his first proper flying lap, because at the moment on the mediums he's down in 20th place. So he's now coming down the straight up towards turn 3. It's braking slightly uphill, up through the right-hander, and then accelerating over the top of the hill and starting to plunge back down again. It's a personal best first sector, but it's not the best, although he's actually, he's doing a reasonable job. Let's see where this puts him.
Yeah, so he's actually 2 tenths off the best first sector, which is Lando Norris. We'll just wait for his middle sector to flash up, a 28.940, which is 2 tenths off that of Lando. Lando's fastest in all 3 sectors. A little bit of a twitch going through that faster 7-8 section, through 9, flashes of gravel kick out from the back of the Red Bull. He just dips a wheel on the exit of turn 10, moves it up into P5, so a decent lap for Yuki, who again is a driver that had a great start to the season. He's moved across to the Red Bull seat and hasn't really shown what he can do, and he should be okay. We do not get too excited. It's only free practice 2, but that will hopefully give him a little bit of confidence. That's if Max doesn't come back out of the pits and then suddenly obliterate that lap time.
Just looking at a replay of Nico Hülkenberg into turn 1. The turn-in did not work. He had to back out of it. Thankfully, there was plenty of room to sort that out. So it was a late break, slight use of curb, and oversteer on the way in. And he corrected it, but that was he had to then back out of the lap.
So my interpretation of that Tsunoda lap time is that Verstappen is in contention for pole position, because he came out on the soft tyres first off in this session, and he's not run the mediums like everybody else. So that soft tyre lap from Max Verstappen is not representative at all. And Tsunoda's 7 tenths off the McLarens, and that's about what Tsunoda's been off Verstappen all season since he got in the Red Bull. Andreas Teller, the McLaren team principal, has spent the year on and off saying don't pay too much attention to Friday practice times from Red Bull, because they don't run the same spec as we do. They run much further off their ultimate pace. It's not like they're making these massive steps forward. We already see what Red Bull's potential is. It's just that it's not obvious from the headline lap times. So if you take all that on board, that says to me that Verstappen is very much in the game, even though it doesn't look like it from the lap times.
I think that's a good point, Andrew, and we will be keeping an eye on that. And Verstappen on a track which he is so familiar with, and which he has had so much good results, so many good performances in both qualifying and in the race. So yeah, I don't think he's going to be too worried that he's down there at the moment. And
he's just going out on a fresh set of soft tyres.
Yeah,
so
he is.
See what he does with it.
Right, using another set of soft tyres.
Yeah, they only have 8 sets over the weekend, so it could be potentially scrubbing in a set, which we sometimes see drivers do, but that's often they do that in free practice 3. But who knows? But I was just having a look at Liam Lawson. He's in 17th at the moment, but I kid you not, about 5 minutes ago, he was up in the top 10 in 8th. So that's how quickly the times have changed. Again, it's going to be one of those qualifying sessions where it's going to change pretty quickly. Lando Norris has just set another fastest first sector of anybody, but didn't have a great middle and second sector, so no improvement on his time. Stroll's on an outlap as well. Charles Leclerc's down in 15th. He's on a set of soft tyres. Let's see what he can do. Personal best in the first sector, Ben, but still 2.5 tenths off Norris.
Yeah, but this will be interesting to see where the Ferrari goes, because we've been seeing the Ferraris a bit up and down. Hamilton is currently in 6th position, having set a time on the soft tyres, but we are keeping an eye on, as you say, on Charles Leclerc, who, as I say, has had this sort of mixed history here in Austria. He has been very quick, he's had success here in the past, but he's also had issues where things have gone wrong for him. That win in 2022 from qualifying second on the grid, that was impressive, into second too, but he's nearly half a second down on Lando Norris, so in theory that is going to put him still into the top 6 perhaps. Let's just see where this puts him. Hamilton has been pushed down to 8th now. Fernando Alonso is currently 7th. Let's just see where he goes. Yeah, he does go into 5th position, so that is the top Ferrari here at the moment. 5th place, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, 1-2 for McLaren. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll in 3rd place. That is pretty impressive from Lance Stroll. I thought there might be a few others moving up, but that hasn't changed. George Russell is currently 4th, Charles Leclerc now up to 5th, Yuki Tsunoda in 6th, and Max has just improved on that last lap. He has gone 7th on that fresh set of softs. Well, we think it's a fresh set of softs that he's just gone back out on.
Yeah, 9 tenths off the pace at the moment, but as Andrew has touched on, don't be fooled by the potential lack of pace there. He's a 10th of a second actually off Yuki Tsunoda, so if they're both running something similar in terms of engine performance, that's not a bad job from Yuki. He'll hope to then be able to keep that there for ahead of his teammate in qualifying. Lance Stroll back out again, not a personal best in the first sector, and a pretty horrible apex there at turn 3. Had a bit of a wobble.
Yeah, although he wasn't too far off. It wasn't as good as his first sector, but it wasn't a nightmare. But as you say, it didn't really work through turn 3, so whether this lap is still going to be any improvement, but he's done a good job so far. Remember, he's 3rd fastest, Lance Stroll, for Aston Martin currently, coming up to the 2nd sector here. Let's just see how far off. Yeah, he has dropped away a bit more now. He's 0.4 of a second away, although ultimately that's where he is at the moment off Norris. He's 0.4 after all 3 sectors, but we shall see how it goes. Lando Norris has set the pace here in his first practice session of the weekend, having not done FP1. His teammate Oscar Piastri is 2nd, but Lance Stroll has been a bit of a surprise with the Aston Martin. He's gone 3rd fastest. George Russell 4th fastest, the man who won here last year after an incident between Norris and Verstappen. And Max Verstappen, well, he's down in 7th place, but the Red Bulls are looking as though they could be pretty competitive this weekend. Meanwhile, a bit of work going on in the pit lane now, because that run on the soft tyre, of course, always important, Alice, at that stage in FP2. But when we get into this sort of latter part, we've still got 23 minutes to go, we are going to get a bit more into race pace. They're going to be putting more fuel in the cars, and they're going to get a feel for the cars as how they will be in the race. Yes,
they will. They'll... Potentially some might be trying it out on the soft tyre, but it's hugely unlikely they'll be doing that. Medium tyre and hard tyre are the ones that they're likely to be trying it on. Lando Norris is, Oscar Piastri is still out there circulating at the moment, going at probably 4 tenths slower. Yeah, 4 tenths slower than his best time. But certainly race pace is important, particularly how close qualifying is going to be. I mean, race pace is always important, but you can overtake round this track. It's not severe, this circuit, in terms of lateral load like we've seen at places maybe like Barcelona, but Deg is mainly really down to thermal. You've got heavy braking zones, for example turn 3, turn 4, the corners that we touched on, where you're heavy on the brakes, getting the car rotated, and hard on the throttle. So those kind of points can really affect the tyre, and that's generating heat in the tyre, and so it's mainly that thermal degradation that we're going to see, and we're expecting temperatures to be slightly warmer throughout the weekend as well, and of course with a car full of fuel, that's going to make the degradation even worse. So really important for the teams and drivers to gather all this information when they can in these pre-practice sessions.
Yeah, and it's really interesting what you're saying, because in some ways it almost implies that the driving style from your fastest lap in qualifying to then in the race where you're just doing the laps one after another, it almost changes the style of driving just a little bit, with the braking particularly, because you've got to look after those tyres and not overheat them all the time.
It's exactly that, and of course taking out the element of running in dirty air, which can affect the degradation of the tyres. If you're trying to save your tyres slightly, we just see Oliver Behrman dropping a wheel in the gravel on his way through turn 6. If you're trying to save tyres, then how are you going to do that? Well, you're not going to be as heavy on the brakes into the braking zone, so you're going to be braking a little bit earlier, maybe sort of doing a bit of coasting in the braking phase, and then you're going to be much smoother and gentler to going to the throttle. So you're not going to run the risk of spinning up those rear tyres. It's a frustrating way to race, is tyre saving, but it's all part of the game, it's all part of the strategy, and we've seen that was something that Oscar Piastri kind of lacked, wasn't it, really, in his first season in Formula 1, but it's something that he's massively worked on over the winter and has improved massively on, and matching those around him, certainly his teammate Lando Norris.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that. Max Verstappen is still on his soft tyres, and he's done a pretty decent first stint and a decent second stint, so this actually could put him up into the top 3. I'm not sure it's going to be quite quick enough to beat what Lando Norris, depends on his final sector. Lando has actually been very good in this final sector. Let's just see what Max Verstappen does. He's attacking, he is definitely going for it, using the amount of curb that he's using, so let's see. Yeah, no, it does put him third. He's not quite as quick as the two McLarens, but it has put him right up there in the battle.
It's enough to make the McLarens a bit worried, I would say, depending on what they're running, of course, but a good lap from Max. You could tell that he was maximising as much as he possibly could, because he was running right up to the edge of the gravel, almost dipping a wheel, certainly through turn 9.
Well, just seeing Simon Rennie there, he was actually engineering for Max Verstappen this weekend as a bit of a one-off, because Gianpiero Lamberti is not here this weekend. We're just seeing a replay of Ollie Behrman when he put both wheels in the gravel. My goodness, I thought he might have gone off there, but he actually dealt with it pretty well. We're just having a look at a slow-mo. Yeah, both wheels in the gravel, and he just tweaked it back onto the surface, didn't turn too hard too soon, which is what of course a rookie might well do, and then spin. He actually dealt with that very well. Just looking at the positions that we've got McLaren up there, Red Bull, Aston Martin, yes, doing an impressive job, certainly with Stroll. Ferrari a bit in the mix. You've got Leclerc in 5th, Hamilton down in 10th place. I'm a little surprised where Williams are now, because they have shown some good pace, but actually right now, although Albon, I don't know if he's back out on a set of softs now, he might be, because they're down in 16th and 17th places, the two Williams.
Yeah, Sainz was way up in the top 10, wasn't he, for free practice 1, so either they're running heavy or
maybe they've done a slightly different strategy, because if they're both back out on softs now, maybe we will see them improve.
Yeah, potentially, but we'll keep an eye on what they'll be doing, but they'll be disappointed for that performance for sure, if they're running everything that they should be in correct modes and everything like that. Stroll comes into the pits, so a few drivers now, certainly the top 5 are all in the pits at the moment.
And Mercedes haven't shown the same pace in this session as they did earlier on, because we've now got George Russell in 6th place and Kimi Antonelli down in 11th place. The gaps are not big. You've got the top 13 cars separated by 1 second. Just outside that 1 second, you've then got Pierre Gasly in 14th, and then Esteban Ocon in 15th place for Haas. So let's keep an eye on the Williams, just in case they are doing anything differently here. No, I don't think they are. He's actually on hard tyres. I think they're on race pace now.
Yes, I think you're right with that. Carlos will be hoping to have a much better qualifying than he did in Canada. Of course, he got held up, didn't he, by Isaac Hadjar, who was sort of crawling around in the middle sector. Massively affected his laps. He was out in Q1.
But that could so easily happen here.
Easy.
The difficulty is in Q1 when you've got all 20 cars out on track, and it's a short track. It's not the shortest of all, but it is one of the shorter tracks in Formula One. It almost makes you wonder, should you go out before the last 5 minutes, when sometimes the whole lot go out at once?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because you want that clear track. You also would like to try and grab a toe. If you're going out first, you're not going to get that. You also want the track in its best condition. That's
so you want more cars going around.
More cars to clean, sweep the way for you. But then the problem is, if one of those cars goes off in front of you, dips a wheel in the gravel, runs through the gravel, whatever, that brings out the yellow flag. That is effectively that lap screwed, because you have to prove that you have lifted or gone slower in that sector, and with times being so close as they are on this circuit, having a little lift, that could cost you 1/10 of a second, and that could be you starting in in the top 10. And as it stands at the moment, Hamilton is 10th. If he lost 1/10 of a second, he'd be down in 14th. So it's quite a few number of places. So no doubt we will see that this weekend. It's a bit of a gamble going out first, but we've actually seen it in the junior categories, where there's 30 cars in Formula 3, and a couple of those that went out right at the start of the session, when they came into all pit and thought, you know what, I'm not going to mess about with having to wait and trying to get track position, ended up having some of their best qualifying sessions. So it's a tough one out there, and it's a gamble, but it's something that the teams will have to try and react to during the session.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Fernando Alonso on track at the moment, 9th fastest currently, even though his teammate is 4th fastest. They are now more into race pace, and for Fernando, this hasn't always been the best place for him. Last year, actually, he ended up with fastest lap, but he didn't get the point for it, even though nowadays you don't get a point for fastest lap. But last year, he finished in 18th place, so he wouldn't have had a point anyway, because you have to finish in the top 10 when he used to get points for fastest lap. Doesn't happen anymore. He had an incident with Guan Yu, and that dropped him down the order somewhat. And the year before, he finished in 5th place. So he's had some results here, but no podiums around this track and no victories. So we'll see whether he can do better. And as I mentioned earlier, he has out-qualified his teammate now for 22 races. So whether that will happen, I have to say Lance Stroll is looking a bit more confident this weekend.
Yes. He certainly is with his performance so far. Of course, it's only free practice. Plenty of things can change when the pressure's really on, when it actually counts. Lewis Hamilton, you could just actually hear it from the onboard there, how he braked earlier and he almost sort of coasted slightly. Again, just trying to work out how the tyres will react. I think he's actually out there on the soft tyre. You can hear the coasting there. So he's out trying to just work out, could I potentially put on this soft tyre at some point during the race?
Yeah, absolutely. There is going to be an investigation into that little incident that was took place earlier with Antonelli. So whether he's going to get some sort of penalty, we shall see. But I think it's unlikely, but we shall see what happens.
Hamilton, even though he's had a disappointing season, he's actually got more points after the first 10 races this year than he did last year. So, if you're looking at it like that, then potentially it's not horrific compared to last year.
Stats there, Alice. That's a good one.
That's
a really good one.
Yeah, but he's been out-qualified more often than less often. It's 3-7 to his teammate Charles Leclerc. Over the course of the season so far, but of course it is his first year with Ferrari. He's only just getting to the halfway stage. Next weekend at Silverstone, the halfway point of this 2025 season, and he is still trying to absorb how the Ferrari feels, how he works with the team, how he works with his race engineer, all that side of things. It does take a while, no doubt, and even for a 7-time world champion, sometimes it's even harder when you've been a world champion established in a team for so long, and then you move teams. There's so much different to what you expect in a way.
It is, and also it's a whole different team. Okay, the personnel, but in terms of culture, the team's based in Italy. Mercedes, okay, they're German, but the factory and the bulk of everything's in Brackley near Silverstone. So is a different way of working, and for me, having worked with French teams, Italian teams, Dutch, English teams, they all have quite a different mentality and way of working, and that's one way to sort of get adjusted to it as well, and building that bond with your engineer. We talked on about it in our coverage in Free Practice 1 as well, is crucial. And Hamilton, he's a professional, he's been in the sport for a long time. There's very experienced people working at Ferrari, but it still can take some time to adjust. We've even heard Carlos Sainz talk about it, adjusting. He's like, yeah, it's a totally different car, and it'll be the same for Lewis Hamilton. It's a different car, and it's not a nice Ferrari and to drive at the moment, and that's not just coming from Lewis Hamilton, that's coming from Charles Leclerc as well.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I agree. The fact that Charles not 100% as happy as he has been in the past when he's been driving Ferrari. Interestingly, he was reporting the other day that the simulation work he's doing on the 2026 car is making him feel a little bit uncomfortable as well. Next year, 2026, the rules completely different. The cars will feel very different in all sorts of ways, and Charles was saying it didn't feel great on the simulation at the moment, but of course there's a long way to go. They'll have a lot of work to develop the cars for next year, but a lot of the little developments that are being done on these cars now that we've been hearing about, you won't hear much more new stuff coming into these cars this year, because at this point in the championship, if they haven't managed to improve them, they cannot afford to spend too much time and money on this year's cars when they're going for something all new next year. Alonso's radio?
Too much bouncing.
Too much bouncing, he's reporting. So whether he feels the suspension setup's not right or whatever, he's not so happy at this stage. We're keeping an eye on Kimi Antonelli. I noticed also, Alice, that the two Racing Bulls drivers, Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar, they are incredibly close. 4 thousandths of a second have separated them, but Lawson actually quicker than Hadjar this time.
Yeah, we've not seen that too often this season, have we? So he'll be slightly pleased with being very slightly ahead of his teammate, but like I said, yeah, it's great, gives you a little bit of a smile, but you've got to do it when it counts. As we're just catching a replay of Antonelli making some adjustments on the steering wheel. Turns into turn 1, gets a snap of oversteer, hops over the sausage curb, and then makes a further adjustment. And there's so many different adjustments. So the dial that he was turning on the middle of that steering wheel, that must have had what, 20 different adjustments on it, different clicks on it. So I think he actually didn't get the right one initially when he turned it the first couple of times, and then had to make an adjustment on the exit. So yes, tough.
I was just looking at him going up into that turn 1, and we've seen this quite a lot. I just wanted to ask you about it, actually, because when they go into turn 1 here, which is an uphill, and you were telling me about how steep it is, you've raced very successfully here in the past, but also they use the curb. I'm a little surprised at how much they use the curb on turn-in, because I would have thought that would upset the car. Just listen to Hulkenberg.
I'm not feeling the love somehow. A lot of the front is not really gripping many places.
Yeah, he's not happy with the front grip, Hulkenberg. But I'm thinking of that front, actually. I think that's what I'm thinking about a little bit, when they use the curb, because what they're trying to do is they're widening the line turning into turn 1. But in using that curb, for me, surely that would upset the car. But actually, it shows you how these Formula 1 cars are designed, that they can do that.
They're quite flat entry curbs, and they're basically, we saw earlier on today how quite dirty it was. It's clearly cleaned up a lot more now, and they're having less lockups. We saw Verstappen and a couple of the other drivers have quite big lockups going into turn 1 on the outside tyre, and they're basically just opening up the angle of the corner, making it less tighter, so a smoother run through. That way they could potentially carry more minimum speed, get cleaner back to the throttle and pushing all the margins. You'll sometimes see some drivers doing it on the entry of turn 6 as well. I actually haven't been seen the camera angle of that, of if many drivers are doing that. And you can't really do it too much into turn 3. It's a bit of a heavier braking zone than turn 1. Steeper as well, much steeper than the entry of turn 1. So where you can maximise and get any opportunity, we just see Liam Lawson, he's out on the soft tyre, had a huge snap through turn 6, but any opportunity you can open the entry and it's not going to unsettle the car, of course you're going to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Rosanna, what are you finding down in the pit lane?
Well, I was just thinking back a few years, forgive me, to 2020. Do you remember the Mercedes drivers at the time, Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton, being told to avoid the curbs because it was affecting the car and damaging the gearbox? Is that something that's still a problem here, Alice, a few years on?
I wouldn't say it's as much. The curbs are slightly flatter. Teams probably would have adjusted slightly, made components a bit stronger, but certainly the entry curbs and exit curbs are a lot flatter. So they're not as, they don't cause as many vibrations, because certainly that can, we've seen punctures. Wasn't it Qatar? Was it Qatar when we went back to Qatar? And they had those really sharp edges on the curbs, and that was causing a lot of problems. So a lot of circuits have tried to sort of reduce how aggressive their curbs are, of course, just to try and suit Formula 1, but also to suit, if a lot of tracks have motorbikes as well, they can't have the curbs raised too high.
Absolutely. No, it's very, very interesting. We're just keeping an eye on Liam Lawson at the moment, who, as we mentioned, is 12th fastest by a tiny fraction faster than Hajar, by absolute tiny margin.
So Andrew Benson's going to have square eyes, I think. He's been so close to the computer screen, typing in. It's quite distracting, actually. Lots of different numbers. I don't know whether he can add up or not, but it's time for this.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
We can go the distance, we'll find out.
Well, I did get an A at Maths A level, Alice, so, but it's been a long time since I did that. Unfortunately, I have a computer program to add up for me these days. Now I'm getting into my dotage. Anyway, look, it's quite a complex picture on the lap times, because everyone's on different tyres. You've got Norris on mediums with the two Mercedes on mediums and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, but you've got Hamilton and Verstappen on the soft tyre and Oscar Piastri on the hard tyre, which is annoying. But interestingly, the fastest driver, at least until he got later into his run, on the medium tyre was Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. He was actually going quicker than Norris in the McLaren, although his lap times have tailed off now as he's gone longer into his run. But like for like, Antonelli was a little bit quicker than Norris on the medium, and both of them a little bit quicker than Leclerc, although Leclerc looks in decent shape as well. On the soft tyre, Verstappen, unsurprisingly, has about a tenth of a second on Hamilton, but that's not very much of a margin compared to what you might expect. So maybe that Ferrari floor is working better than we thought it was earlier in the session. And as I said, Oscar Piastri on the hard tyre, but actually going quicker than Norris on the medium on average. So really difficult actually to make a clear picture about where everybody stands on these long runs, other than to say...
Yeah, understood.
That's Max Verstappen saying he's struggling with front grip, which probably isn't a surprise given these multiple laps into a soft tyre run. But interesting that they feel the Ferrari and Red Bull teams that the soft tyre might be a viable race compound, which you wouldn't normally expect. Normally they go for the mediums and the hards. So a bit of a mystery, Ben, I think is all you can say about that. Very difficult to predict how the race is going to shape up. And what it does suggest, to me at least, is that it could be a really close race between all the top four teams. At least that's from the picture that I'm getting at the moment anyway.
And often it's a two-stop race, isn't it, for this Austrian Grand Prix? So that is also an important part of the whole thing, is making those pit stops. It was a slow pit stop from Max Verstappen, who was leading last year, but it was a 6.5 second stop, I think. And normally they stop at around 2 to 2.5 seconds. I mean, I say 2 seconds. Ferrari have done their very best this year at 2.00. But it was a slow stop, and that's what put him back into the battle with Lando Norris, and unfortunately then there was contact made. So we're just looking at Kimi Antonelli here during this session. I think we're just looking at a bit of a steamy... Oh, I see. He locked the right front, didn't he, Alice?
Yes, so he's had a lock-up on the way down to turn 4, just missed his apex. Is that Max Verstappen he's got in front of him? He's got one of the Red Bulls in front of him. Max has gone back. Yeah, Max has gone back out, so he did come into the pits, had a pit stop, come back out, and Kimi Antonelli now looks like he's coming into the pits with 1 minute 56, 55, 54 seconds of the session remaining. Pierre Gasly now into the final corner. He's not showed a strong pace as he did earlier.
So there's something broken on the cars. The disastrous turn 1, turn 6. All over the place.
Okay, understood.
So Gasly clearly, I was just going to say, his pace is not as good as it was in the first session relative certainly to everybody else. So clearly not happy, something feeling a bit broken potentially there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Best finish he's ever had is 7th place at this circuit, although only twice has he been out-qualified by teammates. He was out-qualified by Max here in 2019 and by, funny enough, last year by Esteban Ocon. But he's been certainly outperforming Colapinto today. There's been a big gap between them, half a second gap, which is enough to go from 14th for Gasly to 20th for Colapinto. Half a second is a big gap around this circuit where they are lapping at only just over a minute. 1 minute 4.5 is the fastest time that has been set so far today by Lando Norris, and it's very close actually to the time that Max Verstappen did for pole position here last year. Tomorrow, I'm sure, if it stays dry, and we think it will, the lap times will be even quicker, and I think getting into the low 104s, potentially even into the 103s, not impossible, but we shall see how that all develops. And as for Williams, as I mentioned earlier, they've been struggling a bit, unless they've been on a slightly different strategy. They may have been, because they had shown some good laps earlier on today, but right now they're showing a slightly slower pace, down in 16th and 17th places. Checker flag coming out in just over 10 seconds.
It is. Has only one car still in the pits, actually. That's Lando Norris. Just as I say that, he goes out. He's going to get to the end of the pit lane before time runs out. You've got to be on track if you want to take part in your practice start. So Charles Leclerc is the first to get the checkered flag. This is a track where they're not really... is not the ideal place to do a practice start at the end of the pit lane, because it's got a slight incline, whereas the grid is fairly flat. Max Verstappen, though, he comes through the final corner, looking at the sectors. No one's making any improvements at all, because obviously they're all out doing their longer runs. As he'll take the checker flag, and he'll finish the session in 3rd place.
Absolutely. So let's just run you through the order of this second practice session. It is Lando Norris who has set the outright pace. His teammate Oscar Piastri for McLaren, 2nd fastest. It's a 1-2 for McLaren. No great surprise there after what we've seen from the team. But it's Max Verstappen in 3rd. That's not a big surprise either, is it? Because he's always their threat. 4th place, though, that is a bit more of a surprise. Lance Stroll for Aston Martin. Well done by Lance Stroll, 4th fastest. Whether he can do that tomorrow, we shall see, but that was a good effort. Charles Leclerc 5th for Ferrari. 6th place, George Russell, who was quickest earlier today. Yuki Tsunoda is 7th fastest. Gabriel Bortoleto 8th fastest in the Sauber. That's impressive by another of the rookies. Fernando Alonso 9th in the Aston Martin, and Lewis Hamilton 10th fastest. Kimi Antonelli 11th, but as Andrew was telling us, he was doing very good race pace, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. Liam Lawson in 12th place, Isaac Hadjar 13th, Pierre Gasly 14th, ahead of Esteban Ocon in the first of the Haas cars. Then the 2 Williams of Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Ollie Behrman, the 2nd Haas, was 18th, ahead of Hulkenberg and Colapinto.
Something is broken on the floor or something.
Okay, understood. We're looking through everything still, but still don't see anything at the moment.
Pierre Gasly there just reporting that he thinks something is broken on the floor. The car's just not feeling right at all for Pierre Gasly at this stage, and that was on race pace rather than its single lap pace that he had set earlier when he went 14th. We're just having a little replay here, Alice, whether we can see anything of any problems. Was this just an error into turn 1? Oh, big oversteer moment.
Yeah, and he really did clatter over the sausage curb, but we've seen plenty of drivers do that throughout this session. Maybe the Alpine's a little bit more fragile compared to some of the others. There's plenty of them doing burnouts now on the grid. Hamilton slots it into gear as the car slightly jolts forward and does, looks like to me, a fairly decent practice start.
Yeah, and the start will be all important, but I think qualifying could be even more important when we get into that tomorrow, because qualifying around this circuit is always crucial to getting a good result. Often the win comes from pole, not always here, but often it does, especially for Max Verstappen, who's had plenty of pole positions here as well. once or twice in the past. It has been won from a long way back. David Coulthard won this race back in 2001 from 7th on the grid, but it was Alan Jones, the Australian, on the old track, the Oostenrijk-ring, who won it from the furthest back. That was 14th place back in 1977. So just imagine that, starting from 14th. In fact, actually, funnily enough, 14th place starting here has seen other drivers move up to some pretty good results as well, but he was the only time that it actually got won from that far back, Alan Jones, in 1977. But it has always provided us with plenty of action this circuit, and we will be very much looking forward to the race and to the rest of the session. So we've got FP2 coming up tomorrow morning, and then qualifying Saturday afternoon, and of course that qualifying session is going to be all important, and Alice, it's going to be a lot to look forward to.
It is, and there's a lot to dive into as well, and there's a few unknowns. Was that Red Bull's full out pace? Who knows, but it's certainly looking pretty good and comfortable for the McLarens.
Yeah, it has been very good for McLarens, there's no doubt about it. Whether they're going to be able to show that once again, as they did in the practice today, when Max Verstappen always has an extra margin here in Austria. Always incredibly impressive what he can do. I think Verstappen will still be a major threat, but all of them getting out of Q1 into Q2, get out of the 20 cars so that you get into Q2 with 15 and then into Q3 with 10. That's much easier then, because there's only 10 of you out. You can probably find some clear space, but that first part of qualifying is always very, very demanding. So we will be watching that and keeping an eye on who is going to make it or not. Lots to look forward to, and we shall enjoy what will be coming up to the halfway stage of the season at Silverstone in a week's time. Do hope you can join us for our free practice and for qualifying tomorrow. This is an IMG production for Radio 5 Live.